It's the Ross Tucker Football Podcast.
Oh, yeah, it is. But it's not just any Ross Tucker Football Podcast. It is a Monster Monday that we're actually recording and posting on a Sunday night, presented, of course, by DraftKings. I'm Ross Tucker, former NFL offensive lineman, 5 teams, 7 years, classic journeyman. You can see the helmets behind me. Those of you that check us out on YouTube, youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL. The new week means new winners. We love them. We love you. We love those of you that try to be a winner. Spread the word winner via social media at Ross Tucker NFL, at Ross Tucker Pod. Looking for some Facebook sharers, looking for some Twitter quote tweets at Ross Tucker NFL, at Ross Tucker Pod. You guys know the sponsors are what make us go. ExpressVPN, awesome. Raycon earbuds, amazing. LinkedIn, there's a bunch of them. Check them out over on the sponsor tab over at rosstucker.com. Love the YouTube growth and love giving you guys the cameo style shout outs. Just hit the thumbs up at youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL and make any comment at all on any of the videos. I will see it, and you'll have a great chance to get a cameo style video. It's Big Show time.
The Big Show.
So I try to talk to this guy at least multiple times a year because he makes me smarter. He makes all of us smarter. He is, of course, the great Warren Sharp at SharpFootball on Twitter. You should go to sharpfootballanalysis.com, sharpfootballstats.com. He's on NBC Sports. He's on The Ringer with Bill Simmons, kind of everywhere at this point. And I feel like every year when I see these tweets, I try to get him either on the Ross Tucker Football Podcast or on the Even Money Podcast because it's strength of schedule time, which I guess leads to this question, Warren. Why is now strength of schedule time? We've known the schedules for a while in terms of opponents. We don't know when the games are actually being played yet. That comes out now, I guess, after the draft. Why is recently Warren Sharp strength of schedule season?
Because prior to right now, the only way that you could really forecast strength of schedule is if you were going to utilize win rate from the opponents you're going to play this year based upon what they did last year. And we don't like to do that. It basically doesn't help us predict anything. So what we do is we look at the win totals that got released by the betting markets, Las Vegas, offshores, wherever they are now, and we're factoring those in as we calculate strength of schedule. And we just got the win totals that came out for the first time, I think a week and a half or 2 weeks ago. That allows me to start calculating strength of schedule. Strength of schedule for us, the way that I calculate it, is a dynamic tool, and it changes over the course of the entire offseason. Now, a team that has the easiest schedule now is not going to become 15th easiest. It's going to stay relatively close, but it's very important that you're utilizing strength of schedule methodology that's based upon the betting markets and not based upon what these teams did last season.
So I'm glad you said that because now it comes out. Here's my question. How much does it change when we actually get the dates of the games and we see rest? Because I know that's a big thing for you is the inequities in the schedule.
Yes. Good point, Ross. Inequities are going to happen all the time. The NFL can't get it all the way to a perfect science so that everybody has the same exact rest and schedule of opponent and bye weeks and negated bye weeks. There's so many different things that I look for with the schedule timing. So right now we know what the schedule of opponents are, and we know what the strength of schedule is based upon that. Just who you're playing, all the 17 games that you're playing this season. What we don't know is the schedule timing, which will come out after the draft, most likely the first week or two in May. And at that point, I then start crunching the schedule and looking for those inequalities. I'm looking for who starts off with a difficult schedule. Like we're looking at the AFC. The AFC is so stacked that I personally think it's fruitless to try to go and bet Super Bowl futures on the AFC right now. But what I am going to look to do is if the Chargers start out with a brutal schedule and they drop a couple of games at the beginning of that schedule because it's so tough, but I know that the schedule is going to improve after that, I might wait until they lose a couple of games at the start of the season, and then I'll bet their Super Bowl future at that point in time. So the schedule timing is very important. It doesn't change the overall strength of schedule, but it's going to change how we're going to bet on these teams, when we're going to bet on them, and it might also impact how much we want to, I guess, delve into like regular season win totals. If a team is really at a disadvantage this season, we might not feel as good about their strength of schedule because the schedule timing is so terrible. So we definitely have to factor that in once it comes out. And I do that. I love it. That's almost one of my favorite days of the year is when they release the schedule, because so many people out there, oh, who cares? We already know who they're playing. No, it matters big time when you are playing these opponents and the rest that those opponents are on as they face you. There's so many complicating factors with regard to the schedule release itself.
Well, Warren, I'm gonna be on you again after that comes out to get you on the Even Money podcast with me and Fezzik for the schedule inequalities for sure. Because, I've seen other people that do a strength of schedule analysis after the season win total comes out. Nobody goes as in depth as you do with the schedule inequities. Let's hold that part of it for the Even Money podcast. For what we know right now, just based on the sportsbook season win totals, and let me take a step back, actually, Warren, because I think I usually do have you on the Even Money podcast. We probably have people here on the Ross Tucker Football podcast. They might not even know what season win totals are and why that's so important.
So season win totals, the sports books set a number. 8.5 wins, 9 wins, 9.5 wins. How many wins do they forecast that a certain team is going to get in this upcoming season? They go through all 32 teams. They understand who they're playing. They understand the players they got. They're waiting until most of the dominoes fall during free agency. They want to see where some of these big quarterbacks are going in trades or other moves. Once the dust settles a little bit, they'll come out with their win totals. Now, I will say, at this point in the offseason, it is relatively early. A lot of times they've waited until after the draft to post those, but it's just like with everything else in the betting markets now, Ross. The sooner you can get things up, the sooner they'll start taking your money, the longer they get to hold on to it. And so they've been pushing it earlier and earlier every single year. So that's what season win totals are. When we say that, it's just how many games for the upcoming season does the sportsbook predict that you're going to win? And then people can come in and bet that you'll win more than that or that you'll win less than that.
All right. So what is the analysis that we know the impact it has the next year? In other words, a lot of times the season win totals are wrong. So we're going based on the season win totals now, and that's their best guess on how many wins. What do we know about after the fact, right? So in other words, and I encourage everybody to check out Warren on social media at SharpFootball, but you have 5 easiest schedules: Commanders, Bears, Eagles, Colts, Seahawks. 5 hardest schedules: Raiders, Niners, Rams, Jets, and Chiefs. So I guess there's 2 questions here. Number one, how sticky are these? Like when we review it after the season, how much variance is there from what we thought were the toughest and easiest schedules before the year typically?
That is a great question, number one, because to me, question number 2 then becomes, what can you do with this information? Can you bet on it? What can you do with it? So let's talk about the first one first, and that is this sticky? So what we care about when we're discussing strength of schedule, we don't care, Ross, about a team that's ranked number 13 and, they've got an easier schedule. If number 1 is the easiest schedule, we don't care if number 13 is a little bit easier than number 16, right? Like those types of discrepancies don't really matter to us. What we want to know is the extremes. who has the top 5 or top 10 easiest, who has the top 5 or top 10 most difficult. That's what we really care about. And so when we talk about how sticky are these numbers, here's an example. Last year, at the end of the season, there were 8 teams that had the most difficult schedules, the hardest schedules in the NFL. That was in January when the final game concluded. Back in April, before the season even started, before the summer even was here, I predicted 7 of those 8 teams would have the top 8 most difficult schedules. So this methodology, the strength of schedule methodology, using season win totals, and as you said, the win totals aren't always right. A lot of the times, some of them are off by wide margins. But in terms of predicting the extremes, in terms of most difficult, we peg 7 of the 8. In terms of the easiest schedules, we peg 7 of the top 10 easiest schedules. So we were very good with predicting the extremes. Now the question becomes, if we're good at predicting the extremes, what can we do with that information? And one of the interesting things that I then looked at was season win totals. Let's look back at season win totals. Of the 10 teams that actually had the hardest schedules last year, so by January, these 10 teams had the most difficult schedules. Only 3 of the 10 went over their win total. In other words, it's very difficult to exceed expectations that the book set if you're dealing with a very, very difficult schedule. And on the other side of the coin, of the 10 teams that had the easiest schedules, only 3 went under their win totals. So again, it's very easy to exceed your expectations. It happens very regularly when you're playing a super easy schedule. So you take those 2 things and combine them. You say, the difficult and the easy teams that actually play difficult or easy schedules by the end of the year, these teams tend to go over or under their win total based upon how difficult their schedule is. Can we use this strength of schedule analysis to forecast the teams that might have an easy or difficult schedule? And the answer is yes. So it is quite useful as a tool, not so much predicting 13 versus 16 and the mid-range, but focusing on the extremes. It has done very well over time.
How much change will there be after the schedule is actually announced and you account for rest? In other words, if I'm someone that listens or watches the Even Money podcast, do I act on Warren's toughest and easiest schedules now, or do I wait until the actual schedule comes out because there's a decent amount of variance, or is the variance because of the rest so small that there's no reason to wait?
Well, in the instance like the Washington Commanders, who have the easiest schedule, even if their schedule timing is one of the most brutal, it's not going to change their ranking from probably number 1 to like number 15 in an average schedule. They're probably still going to be top 7 at the worst in terms of easiest schedule. So there might be a little variance, but the interesting thing is the announcement of the fact that they have a difficult schedule timing, like the rest stinks and they're playing teams that have extra rest and they're always playing these road games on short weeks and their bye week is negated because their opponent has a bye week the same week as their bye week. If all of these things are going against the Washington Commanders, what is going to happen is that the betting market might take their win total from, let's say, what is their win total right now? I want to say it's like 7.5. They might take their win total from 7.5 down to 7. And their opponents, they might tick up a couple of the opponents' win totals. Well, then all of that, all the win total movement gets accounted for as I rerun this model. And thus, it's all going to be taken into consideration. And that's what's going to cause those slight tweaks in the schedule. So I think some of the more eye-opening schedules, you should go ahead and look to just grab them now. If you really feel like, oh, wow, this is lending something to the analysis that I wasn't contemplating before. Once I factor it in, I do want to fire on Washington over or the Giants win total over, something like that. I would wait to do that. I would do some of those now. But the more information you get, the more confidence we'll have in these projections.
Is there a way to calculate, Warren, what the difference is between the easiest and the hardest? Meaning, right now you have the Commanders with the easiest schedule. If they had the hardest schedule, what difference would that make in your mind in their season win total? So right now, I think you said they're 7.5 with
Right.
the easiest. If they were flipped and they were the Chiefs and they had the hardest, what would that mean? Is there a way that over the years you figured out what that number is, or is that impossible?
I wouldn't say that it's impossible. I have not calculated it because it's of no value to me to play in the world of the hypothetical. I would venture to say it's probably no more than a win to a win and a half on a win total. But I will
that's a
say
lot. That's a lot.
That's substantial when we're talking about the betting market and where that would put them. That would put them down with like the Panthers and the Lions at 6 wins if they were playing the most difficult schedule in the NFL. So like if you took them out, I guess the best analogy would be if you plucked Washington out of the NFC East and you gave them the schedule of the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC West, who are playing a first place schedule in the AFC West this year, yeah, I would say it's probably about a win and a half a difference. Now, the reality might be that you would still want to bet their under in that situation. But I don't see it being substantially more than that. And I also, I'll be honest, Ross, I utilize a lot of strength of schedule during the course of the season. And I have found inefficiencies in the betting market. I don't think the betting market takes into account strength of schedule enough. I don't think they do that on a weekly basis. I don't think they do it on a future looking basis, because you can bet futures on these teams. There are inefficiencies in betting division futures and conference futures based upon strength of schedule early on in the season, significant ones.
Yeah, and not this week, but next week on the Even Money podcast, Steve and I are going to take our first glance at the DraftKings Sportsbook season win totals. And I want to make it clear here, this is not supposed to be necessarily for everybody listening. It doesn't have to be a betting conversation. It's just you can all look at Warren's Twitter. You can look at SharpFootball analysis. You can see exactly how difficult your team's schedule is, which matters for your tickets, for watching them on TV, for their playoff chances. Look, I think the Chiefs still have a pretty good chance to make the playoffs, but the Jets with the second hardest schedule, the New York Jets, good luck to Zach Wilson and the boys. Speaking of the Chiefs, Warren, last thing I have to ask you, the new overtime rule for the playoffs. I'll have 2 questions here, but the first one, I like to give guys like you a blank slate. Just your thoughts on the new overtime rule. If they came to you, is this what you would have recommended? Do you think it's equitable? Your thoughts on an overtime in the postseason, both teams getting a possession.
I love it. I think it was necessary because of the rules construct that has been implemented over the years to make the NFL such an offensive-driven league with the quarterbacks and the passing efficiencies and defenses that are gassed by the time you get to overtime. So all the people, I'll just play defense one drive. I don't know where you even fall on it, Ross, so not to offend you in any way.
No.
But if I simply think that those people, hey, now both teams have to play defense. But I think it was a great rule. Now, is it fair? Yes. I actually think I saw some of the models that were run, 12,000 simulations of this new overtime rule by Brian Burke over at ESPN. And it showed that it was the most equitable overtime rule, sudden death rule that we have ever had in the NFL. The team that gets the ball first tends to win those games in the simulation. I want to say it was like 50.6% of the time versus the team that gets the ball second. Whereas the current rule with the coin flip, the team that selected and took the ball, I mean, they were winning the games in overtime like 75 to 80% of the time in the NFL playoffs. So I'm super happy that they have this new rule, and it now presents an entirely new set of choices for these teams to make. Do I want to take the ball first, or do I want to take the ball second? If I have the ball second, and am I going to go for 2 if I do match the first team and score a touchdown? So there's a lot of new questions that are going to be asked of these coaches and decision makers.
Well, that's my second question, Warren. You led me right into it. I don't know if you've run the numbers yet, but should you kick off? And in that way, it's almost like college overtime where you get the ball second. You know you're getting it second. You know what you need. They got a field goal. Okay. They got nothing. Okay. They got a touchdown. Okay. Or do you still want the ball because you believe there's a good chance that there's a third possession and you want to be the team that gets the third possession? I got to be honest, I don't know the answer to this. I think you can make a strong argument either way, especially if you decide to kick off and you're committed to going for two if you score, meaning it's going to be a 2-possession game.
Right. So the numbers say by slightest of margins over 1,000, like this would never play out in any of our lifetimes, right? So the reality is these numbers take it with a grain of salt, but the numbers say that going first, having the ball first, telling the other team we want to receive the ball here, not deferring to the second possession, that will give you a slight edge. And that's because if both teams score the same amount of points at the end of those first 2 possessions, then you get that third possession, which is sudden death. And so the edge that is gained, as you mentioned, by going second and having 4 downs to convert a first down, because you have to at least get a field goal or at least get a touchdown here. There is an edge inherent in having that second possession from knowing what you need, but it is offset and then some by getting that third possession afterwards. So the way that I personally would play it, particularly if I was the team with the ball last in regulation, I would want to force that defense that's probably already tired to go back out on the field again. I would want the ball first. I would go down. I would try to score a touchdown, and I would be looking to just kick the extra point and forcing that other team to take the ball and needing them to score a touchdown to match. And that way, if they do, I get the ball third to just score any points to win the game. The one caveat would be if it becomes, if one team or 2 teams try this at first and then every single team thereafter decides to go for 2 on that second possession, which I would absolutely advocate that all of the teams, if the first team scores a touchdown, the second team should be scoring the touchdown going for 2. If that second team tends to always go for 2, then you may not want to be in that situation where you're kicking first. But it's so close. It's so close to being even in terms of, well, you could argue this or that I think is the perfect overtime rule. I really love the way that the NFL has come down on this. And the fact of the matter is, Ross, it's only in the playoffs. Maybe we'll be lucky and see it happen once this upcoming season, right? I hope that we do. But it's not like we're going to see this so frequently. That's going to be really interesting to see how the teams decide things with regard to deciding to receive the ball or going for 2 after they score touchdowns.
So here's the deal with Warren, okay? Nobody's better with the numbers, but he's also incredibly passionate about this, and his delivery is awesome. Like, I'm not surprised at all that you're a star, Warren, and there's still people that don't know. Like, you've got all 3. You've got the knowledge, the passion, and your delivery is excellent. Really appreciate the time. Thank you so much. Check him out on social media at SharpFootball. Thanks, Warren.
Hey, thanks, Ross, for having me.
Man, that guy is hired. And he's got a couple small businesses. As a small business owner, you're juggling 100 balls in the air and don't have time to interview candidates who just aren't qualified for your role. LinkedIn Jobs makes it easier for you to find the people you want to interview faster and for free. You can create a free job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach your network and beyond to the world's largest professional network of over 770 million people. Then add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring so your network can help you find the right people to hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs number 1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Did you know every week nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? Post your job for free at linkedin.com/Ross. That's linkedin.com/Ross to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
Tuck's Takes.
Hi, Ross. Let's start today with the Dolphins. Cornerback Xavier Howard gets a record-breaking cornerback deal. Most money, first 3 years, most guaranteed money for a cornerback ever.
Yeah, this is really something because he's gotten, I don't even know what year this is for Xavier, but this is at least the 3rd new contract he's gotten. He got the one early, wasn't happy about it. They adjusted it last year. Now he gets huge money. I mean, he's already under contract for a couple more years. To now get this, good for him. Good for his agent, David Cantor, does a terrific job. Here's what's very clear. The Miami Dolphins are not messing around this year. They don't want to have any issues with guys with money. They want to be loaded up. They want to, not only do they want to see what Tua can do, I tend to think that either Stephen Ross said, hey, I don't care what it takes. Let's make sure we have a good year. Or maybe Chris Greer, the GM, thinks he's on the hot seat because they are not messing around. That much is obvious.
Tuck's Takes.
Sticking with the Dolphins, they trade Devontae Parker and a 5th-round pick to the Patriots and in turn get a 3rd round.
Always interesting when you trade a guy within the division. We have to assume that that's the best offer that the Dolphins got, and really probably by a decent amount. If anybody else had offered him that, you'd think they would have rather traded him out of the division. So I think that's pretty telling. Look, he's making over $8 million. So maybe some teams didn't like that. And he's been up and down in his career, but that's a fascinating trade. Anytime you do it in division, the Patriots have had a lot of success bringing in Dolphins receivers like Wes Welker. It's interesting to me that the Dolphins would go to that well again.
Tuck's Takes.
Frank Gore, the 3rd all-time leading rusher in NFL history, is going to retire, and he is signing a 1-day contract with the 49ers to retire as a Niner.
Yeah, I always think it's interesting. How good do you have to be? First of all, Frank Gore had a ridiculous career. To tear both his ACLs in college and become the 3rd all-time leading rusher in NFL history is bananas. I mean bananas. You know how many running backs there are out there? You know how many kids there are that play running back? And this guy tore both his ACLs in college and still became 3rd all-time in NFL history? That is ridiculous. Absolutely absurd. And, he spent most of his career with the Niners. I guess supposedly he's going to go in their front office there, which is cool.
Tuck's Takes.
Let's get to some of the recent signings, and we'll start with running back Gio Bernard back to the Tampa Bay Bucks, a 1-year deal. Bucks also re-signed quarterback Ryan Griffin. The Raiders signed cornerback Nick Mullins. Vikings signed guard Chris Reed, and the Saints re-signed safety PJ Williams.
Brady wanted Gio Bernard back. I think I saw somewhere where this is Ryan Griffin's 8th year with the Bucks. That is unreal. Is that a real stat? Or it was 8 years for Ryan Griffin? To my knowledge, I don't think he's ever gotten in a game. I don't think he's ever started a game. Nick Mullins got over $1 million guaranteed from the Raiders. He could not have been worse in the preseason last year for the Eagles. I mean, he was awful. Vikings keep getting that O-line depth with getting Jesse Davis from the Dolphins, now Chris Reed. And PJ Williams has been the Saints his whole career, I think.
Tuck's Takes.
Your buddy Danny Snyder may be in a little bit more hot water if this story I'm about to say is actually true. Apparently, Washington allegedly had a scheme to hold back some ticket revenue that they did not share with the rest of the teams in the league.
That is according to AJ Perez from Front Office Sports, who has some connection either in the media or with somebody that used to be in Washington or this congressional committee. Daniel Snyder will have to sell the Washington Commanders if this is accurate. If they have proof of this, he will be done. Honestly, what I've seen from the most part so far is like celebration from Commanders fans who are hoping this is right so that he has to sell the team. It's so sad. I mean, you get to that point, that is so sad that you're rooting for your owner to have stolen money from the other owners so that he has, I mean, it's just so sad what's become of that organization. And it stinks because that's where I started and finished my career. We'll see. They have to share 40% of their ticket revenue with the other owners. Supposedly they did. Here's the thing. Little life lesson. If you do illegal or inappropriate things and then you fire people, they might tell people about the illegal, inappropriate things that you did. That's the problem. That's a major, major problem. First of all, doing illegal, inappropriate things is a problem. Secondly, letting go of the people that were in on it. Major, major problem. You know what's not a problem? The fact that we're going to have the college draft and even money podcasts up tomorrow so we can talk Masters and UNC Kansas national championship game with my buddy Will Brinson on the Even Money podcast. Shout out to all of our patrons, including our newest patron, Stuart McDonald. Gosh, I love when we get new patrons. Patreon.com/RT Media. Of course, the shout outs go to Evergreen Economics, SteakhouseSports.com, HumanHeadNYC.com, Go-Bangles.com, Pizza Boy Brewing, and Sporticulture. I think we're done here.
Thanks for listening to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Make sure to also subscribe to the Fantasy Feast, Even Money, Business of Sports, and College Draft. All available at Apple Podcasts, RossTucker.com, or wherever podcasts can be found.
A lot of times on the show, I mentioned DraftKings. Here's what you need to know. You got to be 21 or older, New Jersey, Indiana, or Pennsylvania only. New customers only. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER, or in Indiana, 1-800-9-WITH-IT. By the way, if what I was talking about included a deposit bonus, doesn't always, sometimes it does. Deposit bonus requires 25 times playthrough, and deposit bonuses are paid out in site credit.